Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Bread for Soul Convos with myself, Sir LSG. And thank you firstly for joining me this morning. I have a special guest. I mean, all of my guests are really special, but I'm always so stoked to be chatting to a lot of my icons, a lot of people that I really look up to, who I feel have done so much for the house music scene in general. And today I've got my man ZEPHERIN Saint. How are you, bro?
I'm good, bro. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Well, the last time we spoke,
Good.
you had moved from the UK to Berlin, and I was shocked. Like recently, when I asked you, and you're like, "Man, I'm in Australia." I'm like, what the hell? What is
Yeah.
happening in Australia?
Well, my wife's from here, and we always kind of plan to move here. But yeah, so and I like to keep it moving. I like to discover different places in this world. But first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I think it's a great show, and what you've been doing is great. And thanks for having me here as your guest.
Yeah. No, I mean it's my honor, bro. Like to have people like you on here because for me, the people who really started a long time ago and who still keep at it, because it's not easy to stay in the industry for such a long time. Like there's a lot of challenges that come with being in this industry. And just to stick it out for as long as you did, man, it's a blessing for us who are the music lovers, to be honest. So I'm very happy to be chatting to you. I have to ask you though about this ability to
Oh,
move around whenever you wanna move. Like, is it something that you've always had, like in you that you could just pick up and go, or is it something that does it take some time for you? Is it planning, or how does it work?
yeah, it's planning. It's not like, oh, I'm going to pack up and go because I have family. So it's like it's something I look ahead to, and and it is I like to kind of like discover different places. Like I said before, I like to experience different places. I travel a lot for my work anyway, so yeah, I've seen a lot of places in this world, and Australia has been one of them. And I've always liked the city, Melbourne, and I just felt that what's going on here musically is great. The environment is great, and it just felt like a good place to live. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the same for Berlin. Berlin, I always want to experience Berlin. In terms of living there and the music culture that's there, and just to have that experience.
Yeah.
Just to kind of leave it just for a longer length of time. And I think traveling and living in another country just kind of broadens your horizons and your perception of different cultures.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so yeah, to answer your question, it has to be planned. It's not
Yeah.
something you just do overnight and you just say you're going to go. I can't be doing that.
Yeah.
I have responsibilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, you plan it and you go ahead and you go forth and do it.
And I mean, I know a bit about the German scene in terms of music, especially house music scene in Germany. But I
Yeah.
know very little about what's happening in Australia. What exactly
Okay.
is happening there?
Well, it's Australia is very much. I can only really speak for Melbourne, and it's very much a live scene. They're very much into live music, and the musician standard here is fantastic. It's got a lot of jazz players here.
Mm.
I'm actually starting a new record label here, which is focusing in purely on Australian talent. It's called Inner Source, and there's a scene that's growing here. That's uh, musicians are playing jazz musicians predominantly are playing house live,
Wow.
and that's where the label's going to be focused on. Bringing forth the live element to house music.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so it's and you've got bands like Hiatus Coyote, who's
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah.
They're very much you've got this kind of Aussie soul thing that's going on, and they're very passionate about their music. They love their music.
Yeah.
You know.
And do you have any idea of the house music scene specifically in Australia?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I've been coming here to play for. I think the first time I played in Melbourne was around 2011. I did a tour here. Chris NG is one of the main promoters here. He's brought people like Napa and so on. Um, so yeah, there's a few promoters around. It's not a big scene, but it's growing and it's growing in the right direction.
Yeah. And something that you mentioned, that moving into different places kind of also broadens your horizon with regards to your view of music. How would you describe seeing, like, is there much of a difference between specifically the UK and the German scene? Like, you were in Berlin for some time. Like, is there much of a difference in terms of the scene? Are there any notable differences?
A big time, yeah. Um, I mean, London's very much, and the UK is very eclectic in its approach to music. The UK is known for having a new genre every couple of months. There's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's we come up with genres,
Mm.
whether it be drum and bass, jungle, garage, funky house. There's always something new that's going on in the UK. So and it's always been that way. And London has this, especially in the 80s, it had this very much of a melting pot kind of scene. Different tribes, different cultures will congregate into the same parties.
Mm.
Even down to the 70s, you would have reggae parties with punks in there. So it's very much an eclectic kind of scene. Whereas Berlin, I found, is more one dimensional. They do have their pockets. They'll have their jazz pocket and so on, but they'll have their hip hop side. But really, it's really more focused down the techno kind of route, which is great. I mean, I haven't got a problem with that. And uh, and that's where most of the energy is shifted in terms of musically in Berlin. In terms of the support from the clubs
Yes.
and so on. That's kind of where it's geared towards. And the fascinating thing about Berlin is the support that it receives from the scene receives from the government.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it receives a huge amount of support. The clubs will have more support from the government than a developer.
Wow.
In terms of a property developer. Whereas in London, it changed the opposite way. Property developers were able to come in and close down clubs, and take those spaces away from the culture. In Berlin, that wasn't happening. That doesn't happen. They make sure that scene is kept because they understand the value of it to the city.
Yeah.
And it brings in a lot of, it brings in the most tourism over a year in Europe. It's very much a part of that city's culture is the nightlife. So it's great to see a government that supports that.
Yeah. 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 I mean,
And
like,
yeah,
also, I wanted to just, it's an interesting thing that you're mentioning because in South Africa, to a certain extent, the government, you see their involvement in some music workshops, like, but it's very kind of very very much limited, like it doesn't go beyond the music workshops, which happens once in a while, like, but we have for a culture, for a country that has such a big going out culture, clubbing culture. Well, not really nightclubs, but really just we've got this culture of going out at venues. In South Africa, there's specifically venues we call Shisanyam, which is basically a barbecue place where people just make meat, and somebody will do a setup of more kind of like a chill out setup where there's a couple of chairs, sitting areas, people to relax and enjoy while listening to the music. It's a big thing here. It's an every weekend type of thing, and every almost each and every township has one of those, or even more than one of those venues. That's how big that culture is. But you don't find a lot of support from the government. Like it's still kind of dance music to them. It's not really something well respected, and even though I think with the effects of the lockdown, they are probably aware of how hectic, like it has been for musicians, because now you eventually you see how much effect this lockdown has had on so many people, because we've got so many of those places. It's one thing to have a scene like this. The good thing about it is that the scene grows, we've got more people involved in the scene. But if the whole scene is shut, you also have a lot of people cut out of the scene. And because the government isn't involved, there isn't much structure as well with regards to relief, relief funds. Or how do you get relief funds to so many people who are undocumented in a certain way, in a scene that's kind of like unregulated, if I may put it that way. But I want to ask you about, because moving around, like you when you mentioned in the techno scene in Germany, you as a producer, do you find it difficult having to um, position yourself in a certain sound, like, because you do a lot of soulful stuff, but then you do a lot of Afro stuff too, maybe a bit of tech here and there. How do you then manage to still be able to be relevant in different places where you go?
Well, you know, I have a core uh, following who supports my music. So I could be anywhere and delivering my music to that core following. What those places, those locations are giving me is they're giving me inspiration. So I'm not going into that location to try and make my mark in that location. I'm going to that location for inspiration. Do you know what I mean? And wherever I am, and I'll be inspired to then add a piece of that into what I'm doing, and then I output that to my core following or people who want to support my music.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's probably the mistake that a lot of people make. They feel like, oh, if I go to this city, I'm going to make my mark in that city, and I'm going to rise to the top, and and that's not what it's about, really. It's about going there and immersing yourself in that environment to see how that environment then what that environment gives you back.
Yeah. And how I have to ask, how have you managed to grow such a following for your music globally, based in the UK? I mean, like Australia, I don't know much if my music, I mean, I haven't really checked, but I don't know much if my music is played in Australia. But like, you've got such a wide range, like Asia, Europe, South Africa, definitely. How is it something that just happens organically?
Yeah, there was it's organic. It wasn't something that I set out to do strategically. I just released music, and I and released music consistently. I think is the key, especially as a label. Um, you know, I've never missed a month since we've been going. We started in 2009, and I've never missed a month in terms of releasing music.
Wow.
So kind of that's always kept the label in the marketplace, kept its relevance. Um, and every year I'll be releasing four or five tracks myself to keep myself in the marketplace. So
Yeah.
it's that thing of you don't necessarily need to have thousands and thousands of people. You need to have a core following, and from that core following, you can just keep building from there. You know.
Yeah, yeah. And while we're still on, we'll talk a bit more about the label, but I just want to touch on South Africa and your relationship with South Africa, because
Yeah.
for the longest time you've been releasing a lot of artists from South Africa. You released Black Coffee, and Shana, Tulo the song, Black Motion. You've done a
Yeah.
song with Mikasa, and a whole lot more people. I've done a remix for you too, for your label, for Nathan Adams.
Yeah.
Um,
Which was hot.
yeah, thank you, bro. We should do another one at some time. Like I've gotten slower
Yeah.
though.
We know about
Yeah,
that. We
yeah.
got
How is your what is your view? Because you've been here once in South Africa. When you were here,
yeah.
what was your experience?
What was my experience? When I was there, I was there for a short time. It was like maybe 5 days, 6 days, and yeah, I loved it. I mean, it was a bit of a whirlwind. It was kind of going to Botswana. It was going everywhere every other day. So I didn't get a chance to feel it as much as I would have liked to. But I was there with I brought Victor to play with me,
Oh yeah.
and so we were touring together for a tribe tour. And I remember how shocked Victor was at everyone knowing his songs and singing his songs back then. And that was the main thing that kind of like struck us. Was just like I remember being in a taxi and hearing soulful house music being played. I remember being in a supermarket and hearing Masters at Work through the tannoy system. And these kind of things was like we were just like, what's going on here? Well, it was like the music which was very much underground to us had a bit more of a mainstream appeal and a wider appeal in South Africa, and that was that was an eye opener to see. That was a main thing I got from it, and obviously how everyone knew the words to all of the songs in droves. You know what I mean? Everyone knew the words to the song, so it was an enjoyable experience, and I just wish I could have spent more time there to kind of have more of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was great, and and just going around and just seeing, going to the radio stations and uh, seeing how involved everyone was with the music, with the dance music, and at the stations that we visited was fantastic as well.
Yeah.
And obviously connecting with Vinny and everyone who just known each other through emails and so on.
Yeah.
And just actually connecting with these people was great as well.
Why has it taken so long for you to make a comeback to South Africa?
I haven't been invited. So if I'm invited, I'll be there.
Yeah.
I haven't been invited.
All
So
right.
I mean, I've had people come over. There's been a couple of times to try to work, but it didn't work out because of my schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to get back there. Yeah, I'd
Man.
love to get back there.
Yeah, we need to definitely sort that soon, or not soon, but like at some point, we need to get that going.
At some point, but when
Yeah.
everything's back to normality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, whatever that will mean, because I'm really like shaky
yeah.
a bit. I'm wondering how will things actually be, when we come back. Right now, as you and I speak in South Africa, restaurants are open. Like places, those kind of Shisanyama places and venues are basically open, limited for a limited amount of people, limited amount of time, and it was my first time going, not really going out. I went out for a bit this past weekend, and I felt uneasy, cause like I'm not. I've gotten so used to being away from people, and just suddenly having to have so many people in close proximity, and like
Yeah,
I wasn't
yeah.
really. So I'm wondering like how will the nightlife really be when things kick back in. I guess we'll see. We'll find out.
We don't know. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see, which is exciting actually, because I think there's a new ground that's coming.
Mm,
There's definitely a new playing field that's coming for the music industry.
yeah.
It's called, and I think with all of this lockdown that's happened, it sparked a new creativity, and it's something which I saw before without a lockdown. The last time I've kind of seen that was kind of like around the 1988 time when house music revolutionized the world, you know. Um, and we're going to see something happen with creativity, and I'm not just talking about house music. I'm just talking generally across the
Mm,
board.
mm,
I think you're just going to see a lot of people really just, saying, you know what, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to do what I've got to do. I'm just going to, put myself out there.
yeah.
And yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of that attitude, which is going to bring about something great.
I agree with you because I think having you know not having the that platform of going out and going and gigging has also brought, I think, definitely in me, some sense of assurity in terms of the things that I want to do. Like it's more like, because in the past you could have, your thoughts could be clouded by wanting to gig in a certain place, wanting to gig even. So with taking that out of the way and purely focusing on creating for whatever reason you are creating, I think there's a level of authenticity that comes through that I think in the next few months we will see probably the best music. We will hear the best music from
I
a
agree.
lot of people.
I, yes, this is what I definitely believe that's going to happen. Yeah.
Mm. And just touching a bit while closing the South African topic, how have you, how do you view like what would you say about the kind of growth of production, especially coming from South Africa? Like I mentioned earlier, you've released a lot of artists from 10 years ago. Even you are already releasing a lot of South African artists, but I've
Yeah.
seen definitely some growth, a lot of new cats coming into play as well. What is your
Yeah.
view about South Africa now and what you've heard so far recently?
My, my view from then, I mean, I remember, I mean, how I discovered a lot of the material back then in like 2008 and 7 was through a site they used to have called Aphrodisia.
Yeah.
Great site. I used to love it. I used to live on that site. And that's how I discovered a lot of the music that was coming from South Africa. And then started connecting with everybody, and we signed the chap from Kulo, from Black Motion, and so on. And yeah, it's from then it felt to me like how it was when I first discovered house, like in 87, 88, when everyone was just making the music and there wasn't necessarily any genre name for it, but there was so much creativity just being thrown at it that it was just like, this is just going to spawn off into different genres, different avenues.
Mm.
Producers are going to go down that road, that producer is going to go down that direction,
Mm.
that producer could be staying Afro, or he could be going deep, or he could be going soulful. And it was, you could just see that was just waiting to happen.
Mm.
And I remember I was speaking, I was speaking to a couple of guys there when I was there about this, that I felt that that's what was going to be happening. And that's what I felt. That's what I've seen. I've seen the growth of the producers, how they've technically, the sound is just got better and better and better. A lot more musicianship
Mm.
involved as well. So you're seeing a lot more musicians getting involved with the music. With some of what I've been hearing. Yeah, I think the growth has been amazing. I think it's been great to witness it.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, definitely, bro. And I'm a Soulful House fan. Like I know you do a lot of different stuff. Sometimes you come through with your Afro side, and I don't play much of the Afro, but definitely my favorite track, not only from you, but like generally one of my favorite tracks, house music tracks, is the remix you did for Remy that we've had enough, and
Oh
the
yeah,
that Superfly remix that you did, man. I love musicianship in a song. I love hearing songs that are really full on songs where you could literally take the house music away from it and you see a live band performing the music, and that song is one of those kind of songs. And
yes.
I have to ask you though, like with regards to that, is that something that you've always looked out to do, with regards to your productions, like having so many musicians and musicianship on the song?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. When I'm definitely when I'm in the soulful realm, that's where it's got to come from, because that's what I know. I'm a lover of arrangement. I'm a lover of chord progressions. Um, so when I'm and it's and in the soulful arena, it's all about the song and the chord progressions for me. That's where I start from, and getting that arrangement right and making sure that arrangement builds and builds, and you feel you connect the different parts of the song, so it creates that journey, but you're not necessarily seeing the journey, you're just feeling it.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is what I love about soulful. And so yeah, so and sometimes I can be just very nostalgic. If I hear something and it hits me. I'm just like, oh, that just reminds me of this from the '70s or that from the '80s. I'm not afraid to go there and kind of put a spin on it, and that's what happened with that Remy track. Actually, it was. I just heard it, and the way the bridge was, I was just feeling like, man, this is just like a Curtis Mayfield vibe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's kind of it's got that Superfly kind of feel to it, and that's where we took it. With my team of musicians, and that's where we took it.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Amazing song, bro. Really, really
Yeah,
amazing.
thanks, man. Appreciate
Another
that.
amazing thing that you did, much more recent, is the remix you did for. I mean, the production you did for Nathan Adams, um, Sunset Ritual. Man, like,
Uh,
bro.
well, actually, that's Nathan.
Oh,
That's Nathan.
yeah, yeah.
That's me. That's all Nathan.
Oh,
That
yeah.
production.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, that's all Nathan. Yeah. That's kind of that's pushing me pushing Nathan because he's a talent in his own right all around, and that's me pushing Nathan to kind of like say get in the studio and get it done and
Damn,
do it all,
bro.
and that's all Nathan. Yeah,
Bro,
yeah, that's
no,
all
no.
him.
When I
That
saw
track.
like tri vocal, immediately I assumed, no, okay, this must be
Yeah,
Zephyrin. Okay,
yeah. No,
no,
that was Nathan. Yeah, it's all Nathan. Well, he's part of the team. He's been there. Nathan's been there from day one.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So he's very much a part of the team. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We started off with obviously track with what I produced for Nathan, which was Circles.
yeah, yeah. Man, like, and such a dope singer too. And the story with Nathan, let me tell you, I think it must have been like 2012 or something like that. He was obviously part of, did a song with Black Coffee, and was part of the Black Coffee's Africa Rising event,
Yes.
right? So the company that I worked for, I mean, I still do some freelance work for them now, but it's a TV production company, and
Yeah.
they were actually co-producing. So my boss was co-producing the show with Black Coffee. He was the executive producer, and they came up with the idea Africa Rising, and brought it to life. So I was involved at the time. I was still kind of like a new employee, 2 years in the company. I wasn't really doing a lot of production work in terms of sitting in important meetings, but I would be given certain tasks. And this is also another lesson I want to give to young people, that when you're young, you need to kind of always see everything as an opportunity. Like, I used to be a runner basically. Like, if you get asked to make coffee, I will make coffee, the best coffee you'll ever want. But then it got to a point where I got frustrated that I know I've got so much talent and ability and possibility that I could bring into the company, but I'm just being always told to do certain work. And I remember I got asked to go pick up a Nathan, and they don't say Nathan Adams, right? And in the call sheet, they like say, okay, LSG, you need to go pick up Nathan from the airport from this time, whatever. And I was having none of that. I was like, I'm not picking up any Nathan. You know what I mean? Like, you guys need to get a driver. I'm not, and I was just this young agro kid at
Yeah.
that time. I didn't see an opportunity. I just felt like I've been treated like so low in so many ways, only to find out that, because I was already doing music as well full time on the side,
Yeah.
only to find that, man, I was gonna pick up Nathan Adams from the airport. We
Yeah.
could have had a collaboration hopefully
Yeah.
by now. Like, it's just one of those missed
But we're gonna
chances.
make that happen. We're
It's-
gonna make that happen.
we need to make it happen now, though. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that, because sometimes certain things come like that. You don't really realize that it's actually an opportunity for you to,
Course,
it
of
could be an
course.
opportunity.
I mean, but look at that. I mean, I didn't even know that story, and then you ended up remixing his single anyway.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
anyway, right?
So, did you remix his single before that or after that?
No, it was
I don't
after
know
that.
when.
It was after that. Yeah, definitely
After,
after.
okay, well, there
Yeah.
you go. All right.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was to be anyway.
Yeah, it was meant to be. I was meant to pick him up anyway. So I want to ask you about the label, right? Tribe, running your label, man. Like, releasing almost every month ever since inception. How do you get
Yeah,
that going? Like, how does it work? I think it feels like a lot of work.
it is. It is. I mean, over the years, I've had help. I've hired people. I've had staff. Now I've just really just do it myself. Um, I run it all myself now. But over the years, especially in the period when there was a time when we were releasing like 3 tracks a month. Um, definitely I needed a staff, I needed a team to make that work. Um, and that's how it was able to keep going,
Yeah.
really. You couldn't have kept going at that kind of level without having a team in place, someone doing social media, a label management. Um, you know, it just wouldn't have kept going.
Yeah, but what exactly? I know it sounds like easy, but if you were to explain to people 2 or 3 things that make it such a difficult thing to achieve, where is the most of the work when it comes to running a label, especially now in the digital era?
It's the admin. It's the administration. Making sure you got your metadata right, your uploads. Making sure, and social media marketing is very much a part of running a label. So you got to make sure that you're on point with that and you're consistent with your marketing. I think the best way to kind of approach a label is to have a formula for how you want to market, for a schedule. And what I've always done with the label is I work to a quarter schedule in advance. So I'm always a quarter ahead of what's gonna be being released. And sometimes 6 months ahead. You have to be, if you're going to be doing compilations or you've got an album coming from an artist, you need to be like 6 months, if not more, as an independent ahead in terms of your planning. So yeah, the planning, which is part of your administration, is the main area you need to really be focused on and be on top of in order to keep that label engine going.
And
You know,
how do you manage to then account to so many artists when you're releasing so much music?
through software, through a system. So I use a site called Amp Suite, and Amp Suite is a label management software that is great. Works really well. I recommend it to anyone to use. And you literally just feed in all of your information, all of your data that you get back from your distributions companies and your sites that you work with, and then that handles everything for you in the back end.
Yeah. Um, I've got a friend of mine who releases. He owns a label here in South Africa called Stay True Sounds,
Yeah,
Kid
yes,
Funk.
yeah.
He's
Kid,
dropping every week. Like every week
yeah,
there's a release coming out, and I think it goes back to the management thing. If your label is properly managed, you'll be able to do that without and still be able to pay people, still having to organize your stuff. But preparation, I would say, definitely could be one of the
yeah.
most important ones, right?
Yeah, preparation and having your system in place. You've got to have your system. You've got to have your ecosystem of how your label runs. And obviously the major part of what keeps the label running is the A&R. So being on top of making sure you got your A&R right. In terms of if you're looking for music, or if you some labels look for music, some people labels just accept music. I look for music rather. I don't really accept demos that come through. I go looking for what it is that I want.
Yeah.
Um,
How do you do that?
so, well, I mean, over the years, you build up a rapport with producers and artists, and so you put that together. And my background comes from that anyway. So putting people together to create something. Um, so that's very much what I do in terms of with the label. If I've got a vocalist here, like with Jeff, for instance, I went to Jeff and was just like, "You need to do an album, bro. I need you to do an album, for his first one." And he wasn't thinking about doing an album. I was just like, "You need to do an album. You've got an album in you. Let's pull it together." And then that's what we set out to do, and we put together an album for him.
Yeah.
And linked him with singer. He had singers who we'd been working with. I brought in other singers. Said, "Okay, I think Miranda will be great for you. I think Coley will be great for you," and just kind of and A&R it and put it together. So that's very much a big part of running a label.
Yeah.
But labels run in different ways. So it's which way someone wants to run their label. Nowadays, I consider Tribe to be more of a collaboration label,
Mm.
where it's a lot more of my own production that's going on,
Mm.
and I'm collaborating with vocalists
Mm.
to release.
Mm.
That's very much where Tribe is nowadays. But in its early days, I was all about pushing albums for artists and
Mm.
teaming artists up with other vocalists and getting taken, like with a lot of the material that was signing from South Africa,
Mm.
I would then take another producer to get it into that market,
Mm.
to do a remix of it that will get it into the North American market or the
Mm.
UK market, and it just kind of spreads everyone's growth and
Yeah.
their reach, and it gets them a bit further.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking also just about albums, I wanna ask you, man, like, would you say albums are still a relevant thing to release right now in today's age when people are consuming music so quick?
It's a good question, and it's something I wrestle with all the time. Um, I'll tell you why, because like I about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided I didn't want to do albums anymore, release albums. I wanted to release, uh, I'll sign albums, but I'll release them consistently. I'll release the singles consistently and then drop an album at the end of it.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, but I think it's changing all the time. Then it kind of went into an EPs kind of way. People wanted to hear an EP, so they got an understanding of the artist. And I think with streaming coming in, I think albums actually start to have a bit more of a relevance again, because people, when they discover somebody, they want to see a body of work.
Yeah.
I think that's starting to come back.
Mm.
But the problem is that there's so much music coming out that you know you spend how much time working on an album,
Mm.
but that album's is only in the marketplace of some kind of relevance for not a long time, not
Yeah.
3 months at best,
Yeah.
and then it's moved on to for people to really kind of understand that album. So that's what kind of makes it a bit uh, doesn't give you a lot of motivation to create albums when they can't really stay in the market
Mm.
long enough
Yeah.
to really give you back the income that you invested in it.
Mm.
You know, so that's the tricky point. With
Yeah.
it's an economic thing, but I think if you can afford to, and if you can do it, I think it's still worth doing. It's still worth doing an album, but I think you've got to think very carefully and strategically about how you release that album.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Releasing singles and then grouping it all together.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, and just look at different strategies and seeing what works for you, because what may work for you may not work for somebody else.
Mm. Mm.
So you've got
Definitely.
to figure that out. Your market, your audience, what's going to work for you in terms of how does your audience want to listen to your music?
Mm.
You
Mm.
know,
Mm.
for what you and I do in terms of when we're doing the soulful stuff, it's great having it as a single, but it's really good having it as a body of work.
Yeah.
When I listen to your album, like Movement Circles, is it
Yes. Yes.
the album that you have?
Yes.
Yeah, it's great to listen to as a body of work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than just the single of sandcastles and so on from it. It's great when you've got a body of work that you can listen to from an artist and really get to discover what that artist is about. And that's the true, that's where music comes from. When we look at the golden eras of music, it was about albums.
Mm.
You want to look at your Marvins and your Stevies and your Michaels. It's not the singles that we're pinpointing; it's the albums that we're
Yeah.
pinpointing. And to me, that's kind of what's missing.
Mm.
That body of work from people is missing, because that's what gives you the opportunity to show people your depth,
Mm.
what you're really about as an artist, your inspirations, and
Mm.
your talent.
Yeah.
And you can't do that with a single. You
Mm.
could maybe do that with an EP, but if you're doing it with a single, you've got to be doing it. You've got to be releasing it all the time.
Mm.
It's got to be coming all the time for it to really have an impact,
Mm.
and to capture people's attention. So to
Yeah.
answer your question in short, I think it still does have a relevance. The problem is it's so expensive to make albums.
Yeah, yeah, man, and I
So
want to ask you about that, no, because when it's so expensive to create an album, to release an album, especially when you're working with so many musicians, for it to sound like this colorful thing, you know, like instead of just your own one dimensional kind of way of thinking, but like now you've got so many people in it, and you know it's so costly to do that. Does it ever get to your mind in terms of the money that you spend in an album and knowing very well that you might not make that money back in sales?
every time, every time. Of course, you just don't know. But that's what I mean. It goes back to my point of what I was saying earlier, that people got to be realistic. As an artist, you got to be realistic. As a producer, you got to be realistic. As a label, you got to be realistic. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to chase to say, I need to become platinum. I need to become gold. I need to become, I need to be selling that. You don't need to be chasing that. If that happens, fantastic, fantastic. It's a blessing. But what you do need to establish is that you have a core following. That's what you need to establish. And if you can establish a loyal core following, that can give you what you need to make albums consistently, to make the music that you want to make consistently. But if people get wrapped up in kind of chasing something that's not realistic, and obviously when you know what your core following is, you make within your means to that core following. You're not making above your means. You make to know what you can, and knowing that next time I can improve on that. I can make a bit better. Next time I can make a bit better. And you know that there's a gradual process rather than trying to come out the gate and hit home run straight away. It just doesn't work like that. And that's where a lot of people trip up
Yeah.
and lose their motivation, because they're fame chasers, and they're coming out the gate and they want it straight away. And that's what today's society is kind of built for us, right? People want instant gratification, instant fame, instant. They want everything to happen right now.
Yeah.
And as artists, it's not. It just doesn't go that way. It does if you're in a major and you've got all that money behind you to push you, But as an independent, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and there's something that Simon Sinek, who's a speaker and author, he says
Yeah,
that
yeah,
most of the time people want to uh, act like a like participate in a finite mindset inside an infinite game. Like as an artist, like it's an infinite game. It's not like a thing that it ends now. It's kind of like a long term game. And what I mean by that as well is that you need to look at it like that. You need to look at it in steps and in building steps. Like one thing, yes, you could have a big album, and then what? Because the other thing is that how will you be able to keep on the consistency? You might be able to reach gold or platinum in your first album. Will you be able to have the same consistency to keep going in that way? And will you also be okay with yourself not reaching gold and not reaching platinum? Because if that's your goal, I think that you at some point you will fail, but how will you actually come back from that kind of failure? So I've always seen my music as something that it's forever growing. Like moving circles was great. I'm very happy about it. Back then I did feel though that, man, I just wish that this album could have done much better than it did. But I also, in hindsight, when I listen to it, when I check out the reviews, I still have people today commenting about moving circles, sending me voice notes and whatnot, and it just gives me this sense of fulfillment because I managed to create. I was blessed enough to work with the musicians that I worked with to create something that sounds so timeless. Like 10 years from now, somebody would be playing that album and it would
that's it.
sound just as great.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, bro. And I have to ask you though about like Nathan Adams because we mentioned him earlier. Are we getting a new Nathan Adams project?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm kind of restructuring the way I do things in terms of as a label. because I'll be honest with you, labels are obsolete. You know, it's the whole way that a label system works is it's been working the same way for like 50 years, and it's time for it to change. And so my I'm looking at new models for releasing music, and one of those is to kind of like encourage artists to have their own label. So Nathan, I've said to Nathan, now our arrangement is going to be, Tribe's your distribution. This is your label. This is your baby. This is how it's going to grow. So that's how we're working now, and putting together Nathan's baby, putting together his label, putting together, which will show all different parts of his expression as an artist, because he's not just into house music. He just doesn't make house music. He makes a lot of R&B. So it's to make sure that he can get a full expression out for himself, and that's what I see as the new platform for artists, is for them to have their own house. Do you know what I mean? Where they can release how they want to release it, as long as they've got the structure behind them and the mechanisms and the system behind them to do it. That's the way forward. So yeah, I'm looking. That's what we're focused on with Nathan and a couple of other artists as well.
Yeah, man. I have to ask you though, because you did mention that labels are getting obsolete, and I want to ask you specifically about money. How have you managed really like to stay, like to keep going in an industry that is seemingly not making as much money as it used to before? How is your money situation with regards to the label and
Well,
you as an artist?
you cut your overheads. You adapt. So if the industry isn't making what it was making before, then I have to reduce what my expenses as a business, in order to still be able to keep afloat, or close up shop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of still be marketing in the same way you were marketing 3 years ago, it's not possible. Do you know what I mean? 5 years ago, we were doing videos and for releases and everything. We can't do those videos anymore, because because of the way the industry has turned the tables in terms of income with the streaming and so on. It's reduced our income. You know what I mean? So yeah, the only way I've been able to survive is to cut what expenses as far as it goes as a label, and you become more reliant upon your live work and what you do with your gigs and your so on, and that is still very much, or was still very much, a part of keeping yourself, afloat. You know.
And with regards to live gigs, where were you playing the most? Pre COVID-19.
The last tour I'd done pre-COVID-19 was Japan. I did a tour of Japan. That's the last one I just done. Before then, I was in Europe, doing some gigs in Europe, and here. I was doing some gigs here. I had some tribe parties here as well.
Yeah, and Japan, man, I'm so intrigued about the Japan market, but I don't have much insight in it. Like the way I hear about the Japanese and the way they receive music is such a like something really to look out to. How is it? How would you describe it?
They are connoisseurs. They're connoisseurs of the music. They really understand the music. They deeply feel the music. Um, it's one of the best places to play on this earth
Yeah.
for me. I love it because they love long sets. They don't stop. You can start at 2 a.m. and go on to whenever. It just keeps going, and they just keep giving you the energy. It's an amazing place to play. And yeah, music is very much a part of, especially Tokyo. It's very much a part of the city. They have these, which I love. This is my favorite pastime there, is going to the cafes, where you go in a cafe and there'll be a beautiful sound system in there, Clips sound system, or in the cafe, and there'll be someone there just playing records, for you. It could be Ray Groove Records, it could be a classical, it could be a jazz cafe, and you just sit there and you listen to the music and you
Wow.
take in the music, and this is like this is their morning coffee.
Wow.
You know, there's a classical place where I go to that was in a like a church, an old church, and amazing speakers around there. And people go there for the morning coffee, and there'll be someone there playing classical records and introducing each record.
Wow.
So they really into the music in a big way, and that goes right through into the clubs and into the musicianship there. The musicianship there is amazing as
Mm.
well as and not and the DJs. I mean, the DJs there are world class. It's just such a shame a lot of them don't get we don't get to hear them in
Mm.
other parts of the world because there's some amazing DJs there like Dazzle Drums and so on. You know,
Mm.
there's some and producers.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, one of those who comes to South Africa regularly is Kuniyuki Takahashi. You know, an
Yes, yes.
amazing performer too. You know the way he plays. Love his stuff. I can't finish this interview, man, by not asking you about Boys in Shock. What was happening there?
Okay, right. So like yeah, when I first discovered house music, um yeah, I fell in love with it straight away. Adonis was the first track I ever heard, and so very much a part of the scene back then was warehouse parties. You know, that was illegal parties. That was the only way. There was only a couple of ways we could hear house music or play house music, and that was in the gay clubs or illegal warehouse parties. That was our scene back then. And I'm from what is the sound system culture. I don't know if you guys would have sound system culture is very much something that comes from the Caribbean, which is my roots. And every, like you were saying, every district has the barbecue area where everyone congregates and so on. Every district had a sound system, or two or three sound systems, and that was the collective of DJs. And we had ours. You know, in ours was mine. Our sound system was actually handed down from my older brother, who handed it down to myself and Stan Zeph, who's my brother as well. We kind of carried the torch from there. Included Ashley Beadle was in ours. I don't know if you know Ashley Beadle from Express Two. So we had our sound system, and we were kind of like very much a soul sound system, playing soul music, because you know you have reggae sound systems. We were much of a very soul sound system. When I say sound system, I mean like we when we went to a party, we didn't go with our records. We went with our speakers.
Yeah.
We went with our amplifiers. We bought everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because we couldn't get into the West End clubs, they weren't letting black people in the West End clubs, in the city clubs. So we would hire halls, we would hire community halls and church halls and so on. And we would hire these places and bring our sound system, and that's where we'll play. Or we'll get into a warehouse and just put on the party in the warehouse. So our sound system was called Shock.
Oh.
And so we developed into like it was like 1987, 88. We developed more so into playing house as a sound system, and there was no other sounds really doing that. It was just there was a lot of DJs, but there weren't sounds. So we'll be supplying warehouse parties, the sound system, as well as playing. And so I just wanted to get into the studio. I kept playing these chords at home on my mum's piano. And there was a local studio that I saved up money to go in, me and another member in the sound, Paul. That's where the Boys in Shock came from. I was about 17 at the time. And yeah, just went into the studio and knocked out that track. Not really thinking, I just wanted to do it. Yeah. I wasn't really thinking anything. I just wanted to just make it. And then there was a vocalist who was performing at a party that we were playing at, Carol Leeming. She was fantastic. And, you know, this was a party that happened in the Midlands of the country. And we invited her down. I got her in the studio. She wrote the song on the spot. And those days we used to master onto cassettes.
Yeah.
Right. I couldn't afford a dub plate. You know, the people had we couldn't afford dub plates at the time, so I had to master onto a cassette. So I used to carry that cassette with me when we went to these illegal parties.
Yeah.
And there was one illegal party called Hedonism. And, you know, the house scene back then was probably 400 deep in London. You know, it wasn't big, but it was big for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like maybe 400 people max. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all who knew house,
Yeah.
right, at that time in London. So everyone who knew house was at this particular event, and the sound who was playing there was Soul to Soul. I don't know if you're aware of a group called Soul to Soul.
Yeah,
So they were
yeah.
the sound who was playing.
Yeah.
Obviously, we knew. So I knew Soul to Soul. I knew Jazzy, and so I just went to Jazzy B, and I was just like, man, I've got this cassette. I just finished in the studio. Can you play it? Because those days you would have a cassette deck with your system. You would have a cassette, you know, play it. And Jazz was, lo and behold, he said, yeah, come on, give it to me. I'll play it. And he played it. It was great. The place went wild for it. And I was happy. You know, this is my first song. Everyone had seen everyone going crazy for it. And it just so happened in the audience was the main label back then was a label called Jack Tracks. They were the label who was releasing all of the Tracks records from Chicago. They had Fingers Inc. Larry Heard released his Fingers Inc. album through them directly, actually. So there were an established label on the house scene very quickly, globally. And Damien DeCruz, the owner of that label, was there, and he's like, "What's this track? What's this track? I want to hear it. I want to hear it. You know, come down to my office." And I did, and he signed the track there and then. And then it got held as the first UK garage track, because the only tracks that was kind of coming out of the UK at that time was acid house. No one was doing vocal. Yeah. No one was doing like the vocal stuff, which is what we was hearing from New York and Chicago. No one was really making that stuff. So it got billed as like the first UK garage track. And I remember him saying to me, 10 cities in town. And he goes, and Marshall Jefferson, you know, I'm going to get him to come down to the studio and ask him if he can remix this track. I was like, of course, I'm going to be there. So went to the studio that week. Marshall Jefferson came in with 10 City, can't remember the guitarist's name, and they just, you know, started the session at 10, 11 at night. By 6 in the morning, the session was finished, mixed, ready to go. Damn. And that's when I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. When I saw Marshall doing that, I just watched him all night. I watched him just making the track. I said, when I watched it, I said, this is what I'm going to be doing. That's it. At the time, I was doing some YTS scheme for, you know, some apprenticeship scheme. I said, this is what I'm doing. You know? So, and then the track became, you know, it then kind of made its way out to New York, and, you know, got real big support from everybody. And that was the beginning of my career.
Yo, bro, that's so amazing, man. And so, like, I mean, you've obviously done so much as well from that time, you know, to now. You've released so many artists too on your label. You know, you've released your own music, and I want to know though, like, at the end of your career, what would you be mostly happy about?
Oh, what would I be mostly happy about at the end of my career? I think just doing my best. You know, I can't pinpoint there's a particular thing. It's all I want to just be content with is that I've done my best at the end of my career. That's it.
For sure, bro. No, I feel you. Anyway, I think we can park it here, bro. Like, I'm truly grateful for the time that you spent. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
For sure. And to everyone who's watching, thank you for watching this. And please tag somebody in the comment section who might like the video or might learn from it. Please share the video too, so more people can see it. Otherwise, let's remember to stay creative. Peace.
Peace.